this information. I didn't want to have staff and stuff. No, this is all very.
Welcome to the regular meeting of the Public Health and Safety Committee for July 10th, 2024. My name is Jason Chavez, and I'm the chair of this committee. Before we begin the meeting, I want to offer a friendly reminder to all members, staff, and the public that these meetings are broadcast live to enable greater public participation. These broadcasts include real-time captioning as a further method to increase accessibility of our proceedings to the community. Therefore, all speakers need to be mindful of the rate of their speech, including myself, which is why I'm slowing down, so that our captioners can fully capture and transcribe all comments for the broadcast. We ask that all speakers moderate the speed and clarity of their comments. At this time, I will ask the clerk to call the roll to verify the presence of a quorum.
It's one of those buttons, I swear. Councilmember Payne.
Present.
Rainville.
Present.
Ellison.
Here.
Palmisano is absent. Vice Chair Wansley. Present. Chair Chavez.
Present.
We have 5 members present.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. Before we officially get started, I would like to invite over Fire Chief Brian Tyner and Centerpoint for some exciting news regarding the Community Safety Grant for Centerpoint Energy for the purchase of approximately 28 glucometer kits for fire department apparatus. And we'll come up here,
Yeah.
actually. You can come around this way. Fire Chief first.
All right. I think we're gonna pass it.
No, don't we start it? Did you start it? Yeah, we did already. Oh, we already started. Well, Chair Chavez and council members, Chief, Council President, thank you. My name is Al Swintek, and I'm with Centerpoint Energy, and this is probably one of the favorite things of mine to ever do. It's not the first time we've done it, but I'm with Centerpoint Energy, and I'm here to present a community partnership grant to the city of Minneapolis, which is going to be used for some equipment. For what?
Glucometers.
Glucometers that are going to be installed or available in every one of the public safety rigs. So again, Centerpoint Energy, of course, the gas utility. This is our 154th year of serving the city of Minneapolis, and safety is literally our #1 priority. And so that's what makes this partnership grant so fantastic. So I'll just turn this over. First of all, here you go. We'll make sure you get it to the finance director over there. And I don't know if anybody else would like to say anything, but again, thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank you and Centerpoint Energy for this. The glucometers are going to be a great asset to us in the community. What they do is they measure people's blood sugar so that we can tell if they're having a diabetic event, and if so, we can take the appropriate interventions. So thank you for that. And with that, I think that's it.
Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you. Council members, thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Appreciate it.
Let's get started. All right, with that, the agenda for today's meeting is before us. There are 5 items on today's consent agenda. Item number 1 is accepting a community safety grant from Centerpoint Energy for glucometer kits. Item number 2 is an agreement with Minneapolis Public Schools for pediatric and school age immunization. Item number 3 is authorizing an MOU with Asian Media Access for delivery of environmentally themed performance between water and cloud. Item number 5 is directing the city auditor's office to undertake an analysis of other cities' drug overdose prevention strategies. And item number 5 is authorizing a grant application to the Minnesota Department of Human Services for culturally specific behavioral health supports. Are there any discussion on these items? Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious, item 4, the analysis of other cities' drug overdose, what a great idea. How long will that take? I know our staff, we ask them to do a lot of research. Is this 2 weeks, 2 months?
Thank you, Councilmember Rainville, for that question. This isn't going to come back to us until January of 2025. And as you know, our policy and research team is doing a lot of incredible work, and they are very much loaded with a lot of work. So they said that they can get this back by January 17th, I believe. Maybe sooner if we figure things out, but that's the timeline. And for the public to know what we're trying to do here, me and Council President Payne are just engaging our policy and research team on other strategies that other cities across the United States are doing to reduce overdose deaths in Minneapolis in particular, and also making sure that, as you know, the city just had a vending machine dispensary in South Minneapolis. The mayor was at a press conference recently, and those are good things that we can be celebrating in our community. And one thing that I and Council President Payne are thinking of is, like, how do we work with Metro Transit? We see a lot of these overdoses at the light rail stations, at transit stops, and how do we work better with our Metro Transit partners and other key stakeholders in our community to have these other resources? It doesn't have to be just a city, it could be other partners. So.
Great. And then is our health department, I know the new health director has said he was going to focus on opioid deaths and reduction. Is he involved in that?
So I assume the policy and research team will be engaging with the health department. We don't get to direct that because that would be overstepping in government structure.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. My expectation is that there is collaboration there because that makes it better work product at the end of the day. Cool. Thank you. And then pass it to Vice Chair Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. Actually, speaking to Councilmember Rainville's question around the involvement of our public health staff. My office actually also worked with Council President Payne to bring forward a legislative directive where we asked the administration to talk about their own strategies that they're leveraging to also support, substance use disorders that our residents are dealing with all across the city. I know we got an initial presentation in the first quarter of this year. It was very much a minimal presentation, but from my understanding, our city staff was supposed to comprise a work group of some sorts to come forward with a comprehensive opioid response plans that actually shows what the city of Minneapolis is doing to combat, this crisis that's taking hold of a number of our communities. I know we originally had them set to come to committee, I believe, on the 24th of this. Sorry, actually August 21st of this year, so next month. But I believe we end up having to reschedule that, and we're in conversations with the Deputy Commissioner around what that potential new date will be for them to come to the committee and give us that comprehensive plan that, unfortunately, we have not had as a city. And I know Chair Chavez will keep this committee updated on when city staff will be coming forward with that follow-up presentation. Oh, well, all right. Chair Chavez did confirm. I'm sorry. I think we originally had it scheduled for maybe July, and then we end up having to push it. So actually, they will be coming to committee on August 21st, which is my birthday. Yay, talking about opioid crisis on my birthday. I love it.
No shameless plugs for presents.
So actually, we'll have that presentation on the 21st of August.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wansley. I'm trying to see if anybody else is on queue. It doesn't seem to be the case. Seeing no more further discussion, I will move approval of the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. That carries and the consent agenda is approved. With that, we'll move on to our 4 discussion items. Our next item is receiving and filing a presentation about the Community Commission on Police Oversight and its work during its first year of operation. I'll invite City Clerk Casey Carl to start us off. And our city staff.
Sorry, disappeared on you. Didn't mean to. Sorry, Mr. Chair, I wasn't quite ready for the recognition. As you noted, my name is Casey Carl. I have the privilege of serving as the city clerk here in the city of Minneapolis, and today I'm here before you to provide a report on the status of the first year of operation of the CCPO, or the Community Commission on Police Oversight, during its first year of operation. And joining me today is Carolina Amini, who's here with me at the podium. She is the interim director of the city's Office of Police Conduct Review, which is a division of the Civil Rights Department. And as you know, the Office of Police Conduct Review, or OPCR, is the agency in the city's administration that provides the professional and technical support to the CCPO. Finally, before we begin the presentation, I'd like to note, as I said last cycle, that I've submitted a letter from the chair and vice chair of the commission, which you should also have in your packets for reference. That letter provides their perspectives about the CCPO's work during its first year, and it identifies some of the challenges and accomplishments they've had during that time. So the Community Commission on Police Oversight, it was created as part of a complete revision to the city's Police Conduct Oversight Code, which was part of larger reforms made both in anticipation of and in response to the settlement agreement that was approved with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. The revision was made through the enactment of Ordinance Number 2022-058. It was codified as Chapter 172 of the city's Code of Ordinances. The Community Commission on Police Oversight was created as a civilian oversight body appointed by the mayor and council. Its core purpose is to provide a public forum for meaningful community engagement in police oversight through a civilian body. The passage of that ordinance is one of the final official acts done by City Council in December of 2021, following months of planning, discussion, briefings, and public debate. The commission is composed of 15 commissioners who are appointed jointly by the mayor and the city council. In order to provide for staggered terms, the total number of those seats was divided, and half of the original appointments were made for one-year terms, and the remaining appointments were made for an initial two-year term. After these initial terms have expired, all appointments thereafter will be for a standard three-year term. Appointments were made in May of 2023. A total of 160 individuals applied for the 15 open seats. That was a record high in terms of the number of applications received for any one of our appointed boards in the city. A thorough vetting process resulted in a slate of nominations that were ultimately approved unanimously by the city council and mayor. An organizational meeting was conducted on May 16th, 2023, and commissioners took their oaths and began an orientation and onboarding process at that time. Under its enabling legislation, the Commission has three primary or core functions that have been delegated to it, which are listed on this slide. In priority order, they include, first and foremost, the Commission being established as a means of providing a public forum for meaningful community engagement in the work of police oversight. Second, the meetings of the Commission are subject to the Minnesota Open Meeting Law. Notices and agendas are made available to the public through the city's Legislative Information Management System, called LIMS, at least 2 business days before each regular meeting. A full calendar of all the scheduled meetings is also available in LIMS, showing the date and the time for each of our regular meetings through the end of 2024. Members of the public can also register to receive email alerts from the city about meetings, agendas, and other pertinent information. Each regular meeting includes time reserved to receive comments from the public. Individuals may also provide comments in person during the meeting and submit written comments. All commissioners have a city email address for their official work, and a separate common email address has been created for the full commission in order to facilitate public communications. All regular meetings of the Commission are broadcast live and are available for on-demand replay from the city's YouTube channel, which can be accessed from the city's website. The second core function of the Commission is to participate in panels that review investigations of police misconduct allegations. Individual commissioners are expected to complete the required training in order to be eligible to serve on these review panels. Review panels consist of 3 commissioners and 2 sworn police officers that hold the rank of lieutenant or higher. These review panels are a critical component of the city's deliberative review process for evaluating and addressing allegations of police misconduct and, through the inclusion of these commissioners, provide for direct civilian participation in that process. The third core function the Commission has is to provide its recommendations to the mayor, the council, and to the chief of police about matters within its jurisdiction. Given that the Commission's jurisdiction, under its enabling legislation, is police oversight, that means that the Commission has the duty to evaluate and make its recommendations on police department policies, practices, internal controls, collective bargaining agreements, and more. The Commission organized itself with the selection of its members, from its members, a chair and a vice chair who are responsible for helping to plan and facilitate its work. Commissioner Mary Dido Swinton was selected to serve as the body's first chair, and Commissioner LaTanya Reeves was selected to serve as the vice chair. The Commission also established 3 working groups. These are informal groups of less than a quorum of the body to undertake initial efforts to organize and address work that was aligned with its core functions. Those 3 work groups are listed on this slide. They include a governance work group that has taken the lead on addressing matters about the body's own organization and its operation, a police policy research and recommendations work group to identify, prioritize, and bring forward matters for potential study and evaluation within the body's purview to make recommendations to the mayor, city council, or the chief of police. And finally, a community engagement work plan or work group that has taken the lead on identifying and developing ways for the body to promote its work within the community and to provide meaningful opportunities for the community to participate in that work. I would be remiss if I didn't also identify and thank the principal staff who have supported the Commission in its work. And there are many staff who have been directly and indirectly involved. So I'd like to highlight a few of them here who have had a significant and positive impact. First and foremost, and not listed on this slide, I'm sorry, is Andrew Hawkins, formerly with the Civil Rights Department, currently the Interim Director of Policy and Research in the City Auditor's Office. Mr. Hawkins was the chief architect of the ordinance that ultimately created the Commission. It was his advocacy for reforming the work of police oversight that set the stage for the work that was done over the past year. He also led the initial recruitment effort that resulted in the largest ever pool of applicants, and he designed and conducted the initial application review process, which resulted in the recommended nominations submitted for council and mayor to consider. While he doesn't often get public credit for this work, I was personally involved and partnered with him, and I think it's important to recognize his leadership and his many significant contributions to the formation of the Commission on Police Oversight. Also a critical part of the Commission's success for its first year has been the entire team in the city's Office of Police Conduct Review. Currently, that team is led by our interim director, Carolina Amini, who's with me. And while Ms. Amini has done excellent work, she represents a team, as do we all, of professionals who do extraordinary work to advance police oversight on behalf of the people of the city of Minneapolis. And obviously, our team of attorneys are essential to the success of any endeavor, and that's especially true with respect to the city's work on police reform and oversight. Joel Fussy is the assistant city attorney assigned specifically to support the commission and has been its legal counselor since its formation in May of last year. And finally, I'd like to recognize my newest clerk, Carrie McKegg, who was assigned to clerk for the commission. You'll recall the clerk's office resumed responsibility for clerking and meeting management functions for the commission in March of this year. And though she wasn't even in the position for a full year, she certainly took on that challenge with enthusiasm and professionalism. At the bottom of this slide, you can see the direct web address to access all details about the Commission on Police Oversight through LIMS. That direct address will connect users to the primary landing page where the body's membership roster with individual email addresses, the meeting calendar and agendas, the body's enabling legislation, bylaws, and more can be found. So in the next 2 slides, I'm going to try and summarize the major work of the CCPO during its first year of operation. And again, let me level set for everyone that the Commission was first convened in May of 2023. It completed its first year in May of this year. So we're only about 1.5 months past its 1-year anniversary. To date, the Commission has conducted a total of 14 meetings. The Commission generally meets once each month in the evening hours. The average duration of these meetings clocks in at approximately 2 hours, though some have been a bit longer. All meetings follow a regular order of business, and they include time set aside to receive comments from the public. The first two meetings really were focused on orientation and onboarding processes, and with the exception of the first three meetings, all regular meetings of the commission, as I indicated, have been broadcast. All broadcasts are available for on-demand replay from the city's website and YouTube channels. The Commission's enabling legislation requires that it conduct at least one public hearing each year to allow the community to express its opinions on police policies, rules, practices, and special orders. The Commission conducted its first mandated public hearing on May 21st this year. That public hearing included a presentation by the commissioners themselves, which formally introduced the body to the public, explained its core functions as delegated through its enabling legislation, and highlighted its work over the course of the first year in operation. After that brief presentation, the floor was then open to public comment, and the Commission heard from 20 individuals who provided in-person testimony and 4 individuals who submitted written testimony for the record. A full summary of the entire public hearing is posted and available from the Commission's LIMS homepage. I'll note that at its regular meeting this past Monday evening, the Commission adopted a resolution with findings from that public hearing, including a series of proposed actions resulting from the feedback that the public provided. So the Commission is actively working to be responsive to the community. As already mentioned, the Commission established 3 work groups. The Community Engagement Work Group, for example, took the lead in planning and organizing its May 21st public hearing, which included extensive community outreach to promote awareness, including in multiple languages and through multiple channels, which also included the city's official communications platforms, as well as the personal networks of all of the commissioners and key community partners. I already noted the resolution was adopted this past Monday. The community engagement work also is reviewing and considering further improvements as well to better inform and engage the community in its work going forward. Through all of its work groups and from the participation of all members, the body adopted a resolution at its regular meeting in April, which identified a set of goals and priorities to guide its work for the rest of this year and to set the stage for similar planning efforts in 2025 and beyond. Among other matters that were identified in that resolution, as shown on this slide, the Commission set an expectation that all of its members would complete all of the mandated training prior to its regular meeting in July. That it set an expectation all commissioners would serve on 1 or 2 review panels per month in order to address the backlog of complaints. It set an expectation that the Office of Police Conduct Review, OPCR, would present a plan and report monthly on its progress against that plan to reduce the complaint backlog. And finally, it set an expectation that the CCPO would align its policy recommendations with the work by other stakeholder groups, which includes the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, the United States Department of Justice, and the city's independent evaluator, Effective Law Enforcement for All, also known as ELIFA. Council will recall the annual work plans are one of the new requirements for city boards and commissions under the reform ordinance. I think that this list of goals and the priorities more than satisfies that requirement. It's an ambitious plan and will drive much of the planning for the rest of this year and, as I said, into 2025. The governance work group finalized its work to produce a set of bylaws, which were presented at the regular meeting in April. They were held over until this past Monday's regular meeting when they were formally adopted. The bylaws will govern the Commission's operation within the parameters of its enabling legislation. The bylaws need to be approved next by Council and Mayor before becoming official. As a complement to the bylaws, the governance work group is now taking up the development of procedural rules to structure its meeting and the conduct of those meetings. And I'd like to express my personal appreciation to Commissioner Olson and the governance work group and to the entire commission really for their partnership in the development of those bylaws and rules. As this body is aware, one of the other important reforms for all city boards and commissions is the use of standard bylaws and rules that will add stability, predictability, and consistency across all of our boards and commissions that operate within the city enterprise. The Commission on Police Oversight agreed to be our first test case, and they helped us to make significant improvements to the original draft that staff prepared. Those bylaws then become the starting point for our work to develop standards that can be applied to all other city boards and commissions as part of the implementation of enterprise-wide reforms. Finally, with respect to training, and I know Ms. Amini will touch on this more, OPCR arranged for an on-site, in-person training session that was conducted on Saturday, June 22nd. It was led by representatives from the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, also known as NACOL. NACOL is a national nonprofit organization whose mission is to support the work of independent civilian law enforcement oversight bodies. Their goal is to ensure that law enforcement agencies are transparent, accountable, and responsive to the communities they serve. Among its work, NACOL provides training programs, identifies best practices and standards, acts as an information clearinghouse, and provides professional credentialing programs for its members. And here again, I'd like to thank Mr. Hawkins, who had the foresight to consider that engaging NACOL would be an important component in setting this commission up for success. He lobbied to secure funds to secure NACOL membership, training, and other support for the commission. Because of that advocacy, the council granted $20,000 to support this aspect of the commission's work. That funding is within the Civil Rights Department budget, as the city department assigned to support the work of this commission. And Ms. Amini and her team carried forward and made all of the arrangements to bring NACOL to Minneapolis to provide on-site, all-day training just a few weeks ago. I believe that all of the commissioners found the training to be of significant value, and there has been discussion since about opportunities to further engage NACOL and even ALIFA on helping to evaluate and prioritize other powers and functions of the commission. Mr. Chair, you requested a high-level summary of the Commission's first year of operation, and while you requested a view of that work, we know the presentation would not be complete without also addressing the work of the Office of Police Conduct Review in support of the Commission. So in particular, the status of cases and complaints has been a focus of the Commission during its first year. It's a subject of intense interest and focus both with the Commission and with this Council, we know. Ms. Amini is here to provide some high-level data about the status of those cases, which she reports on every month to the Commission on Police Oversight. And when she's completed her comments, I'll return to close the presentation.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Chair Chavez. I'd also like to introduce Lily Hastings. She's representing MPD's Internal Affairs as well. And she has, along with Internal Affairs, have worked alongside OPCR in presenting the statistics between our cases. As you're aware, CCPO has jurisdiction to review OPCR cases and along with Internal Affairs. So you'll see both of our information in this presentation. Yeah, thank you. Oh, and to further address the last point in this slide, the comprehensive training by NACOL that was conducted on June 22nd, some of those training topics included the transparency and reporting practices, best practices for conducting and reviewing investigations, group dynamics and processes, and identifying those challenges and opportunities that exist within a civilian commission. There were also interactive discussions and review of mock case studies to cover as a group. And from the general feedback that I received from CCPO is that they really enjoyed the training. They had great discussions and group dynamics, policy organizations, and sparked conversations regarding the technical assistance that would be offered by NACOL. As part of this month's CCPO training, the commissioners discussed the opportunity to use those 15 hours of technical assistance included in that contract. And within further discussions within CCPO and OPCR, we will figure out how to best utilize those 15 hours. So for the review panels, a total of 11 review panels were hosted to have 17 cases. OPCR has scheduled cases for those review panels in June and July, and we are currently working on scheduling the August panels. So we have a total of 17, as you can see on the slide, with a merit of 11 cases. 4 of those originated from my office in OPCR and 7 from Internal Affairs. There were 6 no merit determinations, 1 from OPCR and 5 from Internal Affairs. And from the chief's decisions, there was 1 that was closed final discipline, 3 that are currently in grievance, 4 that were remanded for further investigation, 4 pending chief's decisions, and 5 have been closed. So for July, we had scheduled 5 panels to review 9 cases total. And like I had mentioned earlier, we are working with CCPO staff and with sworn panelists to schedule the August cases. So cases in intake, this is for OPCR. We have a total of 180, with the oldest case being 1,874. Internal Affairs, as you see on the slide, is 22, with the oldest case of 393. And I also want to reiterate that this is a statistic created on June 18th, 2024. So those same two cases will just have an increased amount of days. For legacy cases, so any cases that were in the practice manager, the old system that we have between IA and OPCR, OPCR had 10, IA has 0, and the oldest case being that 1,874, and of course that is from OPCR. Yes.
And then as well, to address commissioners or committee members here, again, my name is Lily Hastings. I'm from MPD's Internal Affairs Department, one of the civilian case investigators. And again, like Amini said, we had a total of 22 intakes as of June 18th, 2024, with that oldest date of 393 days. Due to staff turnover, that complaint was inaccessible to us for over 1 year. Hence why you see a very large amount of days there, and that case will be moving out of intake next week.
Okay, yeah, please. For cases for OPCR investigators, we had a total of 48 case investigations with a legacy of 52 cases. And again, this is pulled from July 18th, 2024, and that number still holds true today, with some of our oldest cases being 1,316 days old. And we do have a few that are unassigned, that are a total of 18 cases, with our legacy cases of a total of 5. You want that?
All right, and then for IA's cases, you see we have 101 that were assigned to an investigator currently, and again, this is as of June 18th, 2024, and then we had 53 that are unassigned. And then again, to provide some context on our oldest days, you see on our assigned to investigator, we have an oldest day of 1,561. This case was a referral from OPCR to IA and has only been in IA's office for a total of 358 days. That case will be closed relatively soon here. It just entered supervisory review this morning. And then just to give you a second oldest date, so you have some comparison, our second oldest date is 1,302 in that category.
So this next slide describes how many are in supervisor review. So what does that mean? It means that the investigator had completed all of their investigations. There's a formal write-up completed, and it is just pending the commander of internal affairs or myself to review the case, offer feedback, and then provide that document back to the case investigator for edits. So this slide says 12 cases. I had completed 2 just on last Friday, so it is 10 cases pending OPCR, and then 6 of those 10 are waiting final edits from the case investigator.
And of our 6 cases, that is still the same amount for IA as of today. All of those should be coming through within the next week to move on to the next stage, which would be the review panel process.
So opportunities and next steps. OPCR had created a project plan with the intake priority designations. We have them set between priority 1s and priority 3 statuses based on the severity of the case. Our intake all of our investigators are working on the intake process and working very diligently to minimize that backlog. So the timeline of what we consider the backlog is every case from inception up until May 13th. So like I had mentioned earlier, all OPCR investigators are working towards minimizing that backlog. And there are the external contract of Wiley Reber has a total of 6 cases within their first batch, and then another 5 within July. That is pending the upload into their SharePoint. Jones Day is wrapping up their cases from both divisions. Currently, there are 10 remaining within Jones Day within OPCR, 7 of which are in supervisory review. OPCR is also working on finalizing the standard operating procedure with IA to address MDHR's requirements as well.
Anything else?
So, Mr. Chair, in conclusion, we wanted to address the work, as you asked, right away that sets the stage for the rest of the year. The work that we described today and much more that wasn't included in our review is vital to the city's efforts to reform law enforcement in the city of Minneapolis. And I would like to note again that the commission's chair and vice chair did submit a letter that summarized their perspectives over the course of the first year. On their behalf, I'd like to pull just a few lines from their letter to read into the record. So quoting from their letter, the city approved a court-enforceable settlement agreement with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights that provides a framework for lawful, non-discriminatory policing and better support for public safety in the city. That agreement serves as an extensive plan for positive changes in the MPD and community policing more generally, and covers a number of planned reforms that will take time to achieve. The CCPO has a role with those reforms. Admittedly, the work over the past year has been slow and, at times, frustrating, both for commissioners as well as for the community monitoring our work. We understand that reforms, especially lasting reforms that achieve the kind of community safety we all collectively want, will take time. Our March meeting served as a reset, both for the CCPO and for the administration, in terms of shared planning, priority setting, and collaboration going forward. By all accounts, it was our most successful meeting to date, and it re-energized commissioners to tackle the tasks ahead of us. As a result of that reset, the CCPO, with strong support from the city, has refocused and redoubled its efforts. Beyond this summary of our first year of operation, we would like to express, on behalf of all commissioners, our sincere gratitude to the mayor and council for this incredible opportunity to serve the city of Minneapolis and all of its communities in such an important way. We believe that the foundation laid over this past year will enable the CCPO to make good advancement on its charge in the years ahead. And so with that, Mr. Chair, we've completed our presentation and happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and thank you all for the presentation. I'll first pass it to Council President Payne.
Thank you, Chair Chavez, and thank you for this presentation. I'm particularly grateful to see just a more updated list of the open cases. One thing that I'm trying to understand, it's extremely helpful to see what our oldest cases are, but it's also not giving a lot of insight into what our expectations should be, because I think there's a lot of legacy involved with the length of those cases, especially if you lose track of one for over a year, right? So we don't need to litigate the past, but going forward, I think it would be good for us to have a more regular understanding of what that caseload is looking like. And I was just curious to what extent it would be a challenge to, not just give us the maximum in terms of age, but, what's the minimum? Are we getting cases daily? Would that number never update or, change? Or just be the latest is one day? Or, what's the mean and the average? Because it's I don't think that 1,874 days is something that we should be accustomed to, but I also don't think that's something that we would tend to see on the regular. So I'm just trying to kind of parse that out a little bit more.
Sure, I'd be happy to address that. That one is a significant outlier. It was due to human error. It was coded incorrectly. So every time we do a quality control every few months, that particular case was missed because we had failed to look under that particular status, which is uncommon. Mm-hmm. So that is the reason why that one is a significant outlier. On average, OPCR receives about 230 to 240 civilian complaints a year, and we are on track with that average. I believe that the data has been as far back as 2019 or 2018. So our averages are holding steady.
And so would you be able to say on average, or even kind of a more expected range when you don't see these extreme outliers, how long it would take to move through at least intake, or maybe some of the key steps, intake, investigation, to close? I have to assume there's a huge amount of range on that, but I'm just curious if we can just start getting to some expectations that we should be holding ourselves to.
Sure. So it's hard to also, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's also hard to gauge without considering the confounds of the tremendous amount of turnover that we've had mm-hmm. within the last few months that has also affected it. There was also a significant amount of turnover in 2023, which also stalled the intake process at that point. And then on top, the influx of cases that happened between 2020 and 2021. So we have those three chapters, I guess, within OPCR that has significantly caused a cascading effect to where we are today.
I'm wondering if maybe the clerks could just document this as a follow-up, those three categories, if there's any way to pull data to say, here goes what the average length of time is in each of those categories, that might start unpacking some of the things I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, and Lily might have some more context to that.
For IA's portion, I do have some of those numbers with me right now,
great.
if you would like to hear them. Okay, let me just go back to those slides for you. And go them. Okay, so we had those 22 IA cases. The oldest age was the 393. The median age was 45 days. As of this morning, we have 17 that are sitting in intake status. We have that case that was on there, that 393, that's now at 415 days, but the median age is 61. We have 6 cases that are 1 to 2 days old right now in intake. We have 2 cases that are 40 to 50 days old. We have 7 cases that are 60 to 70 days old. We have 1 case that's 135, and then 1 that's that 415. And then for our investigations, as of these numbers, we had the 101 that were assigned. We had the 1,561 days as our oldest case, which again was a referral from OPCR to IA, and IA only had it for a total of 358 days at this point. The median age of our cases that were assigned at that point was 369 days since the complaint was received by IA, or 413 days since the complaint was received by a different city entity, i.e. usually OPCR, prior to a referral to us. Let me see. As of today, we have 106 that are assigned to investigators. 68 of those are open cases assigned to IA investigators. 15 are prelims, 18 are admins. Sorry, my bad. 53 are admins. Of those, the oldest age is 1,586. Again, that matches with that oldest age on the slide. The average was 435 days since the complaint was received by a different city entity, and 391 days since it was received by IA. We have 8 cases that are with the HRIU, and IA is assigned as a liaison. We have 11 cases that are with external investigators, which would be Jones Day, where IA is a liaison, and we have 19 cases that are in expedited dispositions that will be moving through our process expeditedly. We also have the 53 cases that were unassigned. The oldest age was 868. Again, that was a referral from OPCR to IA and has only been in IA for a total of 154 days at that point. The second oldest case was 487 days, and that was also a referral from OPCR to IA and has only been in IA for 369 days. The median age for those unassigned is 173 days since it was received by IA, and 199 days since it was received by a different city entity. As of today, there are 65 unassigned cases. Again, with that oldest age, it's that same case that's sitting there, 890 days. Our second oldest case is 793. You'll see that there was a discrepancy here with our second oldest. In the last one, we moved it from a different category. It needed to be reassigned from a previous investigator to a new investigator. So now our median age is 252 days since it was received by IA, and 260 days since it was received by a different city entity. And those numbers, the unassigned, is expected to change pretty drastically in the coming weeks. We had 2 IA staff that were previously doing intake that are transitioning to investigations. We had 2 new IA staff come in June that were starting in intake and are now moving to be investigations in the next couple weeks. And then we have 2 additional IA staff that are going to do their training in intake. They start next week, and then they will be moving to investigations after that. So we anticipate that number to drastically decrease.
Maybe a good follow-up question would be, in both of your experience, if, we were clearly dealing with a lot of turnover, a lot of fluidity to being able to measure our capacity, but in a perfect world where we have today the number of investigators that you need with the skill set, what would be your expectation for those averages that you would hope to see in terms of the amount of time it would take?
The time it would take for an intake case or for the, okay. Well, from experience, I used to be an intake investigator for several years. I average between 8 to 10 cases a week. I would expect that same from the intake investigators from OPCR as well. And also to address your previous question, CCPO had asked something very similar on Monday. So I had approached IT and with our data team within OPCR to kind of create a Tableau site that has how many cases are coming into OPCR, what is currently existing and what is flowing out, and then and then show all those statuses with those time frames, the average, median, and then the outliers as well. I can definitely, once that is built, have a meeting with IT on Friday. I don't want to put a timeline on IT, as we all know they're exceptionally busy as well. But once that is drafted and built, I would be happy to share that with this committee as well.
Yeah, that level of transparency, I think, would go a really long way to what we're trying to accomplish, so thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And also, I'm sorry, to address something similar to what Lily had mentioned, we are also doing a mass hiring for the case investigators. We are missing 5, or slotted for 5 case investigators, and it will be with the same idea of what Internal Affairs is doing. They will go through intake, train, be able to learn on policies, how we run our business within OPCR, and then move to case investigations as well.
And then also for the context on the timeline piece, per the settlement agreement, we have a 30-day maximum for intake, so you would expect to see that. In our drafted SOPs, we made a priority scale so that some that are more egregious will be hopefully done with a goal of 14 days, and then 21 days for a second priority category, and then the 30 days for things that are like service-type complaints of somebody didn't like the service that was offered to them at that point. So you'll begin to start seeing those. We're also in IA building a Smartsheet kind of database that'll show us how long each investigator is taking with their assigned duties so that we can judge that internally, but that's, another thing that we would like to be able to explain is that, when a case actually is finally assigned to somebody, this is how long it's taking. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I have myself on cue. If we could please go to page 7, the review panels. I'd just like to learn a little bit more about the chief's decision component and maybe for the public to understand how this works. Can you walk us through what the grievance period is and then what the pending chief decision means? I'm assuming those are cases that we're waiting to see if the chief is going to say this is discipline or not, but I think it would be important for the public to understand what this means.
Sure, absolutely. So OPCR schedules all of the IA and OPCR cases with the CCPO and the sworn members. Once that review panel, which consists of 2 sworns and 3 civilians, convene and issue their recommendations on a shared document, it is then sent to OPCR. OPCR then has 3 days to send that to the front office or the chief's office. So currently, it's the Commander of Internal Affairs, Commander Ali, receives this case, reviews the case, and has a presentation with the chief. I'm not entirely sure what that presentation looks like, but by the time that Commander Ali receives the case to when the chief issues a discipline is 30 days. Within those 30 days, the first 15 days, the chief has the ability to remand cases. So the remanded for further investigation would have happened within those first 15 days, for example. Pending chief's decisions, I'm not entirely sure where they are with that on that status. I don't know if Lily might have some more information on that as well, but that is something that, from my understanding, that those are the ones still pending the final documentation from the chief's office.
And we have the chief here, Chief O'Hara, if you have
wonderful, perfect timing.
answer to the pending chief decision cases. Thank you.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Chief.
Good afternoon, Chair. I received a case file within the last week. I'd have to look up to see what time that was from a panel. But there is nothing delinquent. It's 30 days from the time that the panel makes a decision until the time that I have to render a decision. So I know we received a case file within the last week, but I haven't spoken to IA about it yet. There's nothing delinquent.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Just
you, Chair.
making sure the public wants to understand how this works. It's helpful for the council too.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, to understand how it works is that's the first time I have eyes on whatever the case is. So I'd like to go over it with internal affairs first, especially if it's an internal affairs case, because that's the people who have the most information to understand what's best. And then there is kind of an idea of where I want to go. And the commander of IA, Commander Ali, coordinates with the city attorney's office and then presents a proposal to me, and then we kind of go back and forth till we have a final decision.
Thank you.
So, and I think also it's important for the public to understand, even then when discipline is issued, even if I terminate someone, you don't see that publicly until the grievance process is over, which can be a very long time. So publicly, the community doesn't know, because discipline is not final until the grievance period is over. So unless a case is, for example, like expedited discipline, where the person agrees to it up front, there is no grievance to that. The Federation has agreed to the discipline and so on. Those types of things can be immediately. And then there's a time period, a number of days, I don't recall offhand, after we make a decision that the member has to file a grievance. And if they don't do that, then it can be final. Yep.
Thank you. And for the grievance period, you can discipline someone, and someone can file a grievance, or
Yes.
you could decide to you're firing them or disciplining them. But the list here isn't just officers being fired, right? It's
Correct.
maybe someone
Yes.
being disciplined.
Yes.
Okay.
But the public wouldn't know if it's being grieved, Chair. The public wouldn't know anything until the discipline is final, and the discipline is considered final once the grievance process is complete.
Thank you. And then my last question on this slide is the closed. I'm assuming in this particular instance, the 5 closed means that there's no action, no discipline, correct? Or am I misunderstanding what that means?
I'm not sure who's, yeah.
Thank you, Chief.
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, that would mean that they were closed with no discipline. So that would be categorized as those no merit cases.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, and then my next question is on page 8. And I'm trying to understand the actual backlog. Are we adding OPCR, Internal Affairs and Legacy, or we're adding case intakes and case investigations? Trying to understand the actual backlog number, just for us to understand what that is.
So those 10 legacy cases within OPCR are in the 180 total.
Okay, perfect. So 202 would be for case intakes. That's the backlog that we have as of June 26th is what you said? And then may have
June
changed.
18th, yes.
Okay, perfect. And then for case and investigations, okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you. I think for us to understand is, one, that number seems pretty high. I do have a lot of concerns of cases and where a lot of our residents are probably waiting for some action to happen. So I think for us to hear that number, one, very shocked, because it's something that doesn't feel good to a lot of our residents. And we got to figure out like what we as a body have to do to make sure that we are moving these cases a lot more quicker, because that means that, you know, people need answers. And if there are violations being found, that means that we have people in the force that can continue to harm people in our community. So I think for me, the numbers are very high, and I got to figure out like what we have to do in this body to make sure that we're moving along these cases, and whatever staff needs support on to make sure that they can start moving along. So I guess my question is, what do we need to do to help move this a lot more quicker, because that's a big number.
Right, and OPCR is taking that into consideration, and that's why we had developed such a robust backlog project plan in first off, looking at every single case, assigning them the severity, and then having the more severe cases, which was a little over 100 of those were marked within that category. Half of them have been completed and routed appropriately, while the other half have been formally assigned. So hopefully those priority 1 cases will be done and completed in July. And then, of course, the other issue is human capital. When those 5 individuals start, they will focus on those backlogs, but as a priority 3, because it is of my opinion that is the best way to learn, is to find those cases that have what Lily had said, like service complaints. They called 911, say at 9 in the morning, and an officer didn't show up until 11 in the morning. So there's a lot of good opportunity for them to learn MPD systems that way. Have those 63 cases then completed by them, and then hopefully expedite what we have in our backlog in OPCR.
And then to go to your comment, Chair, regarding, somebody might continue this action in that time frame, we are working pretty diligently along with OPCR with EIS, the the Early Intervention System, my bad. We also do triage to notify MPD command staff, something that may happen for like an egregious thing that we come in. We do a summary memo, we do a triage of it that happens within 48 hours typically. We do, I think, have about 72 hours to do it, but typically it's happening in 48 hours, and then we notify up the chain, so maybe somebody needs to go on to desk duty for a period of time until we can move through that intake and get into investigation. So I just wanted to make it clear that there aren't just things sitting there. We are working through those and triaging. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This presentation has been very informative, so I do really appreciate the information, and the numbers are very helpful in general, so thank you so much. Before I pass it on to Vice Chair Wansley, I forgot to mention that Councilmember Palmisano has an excused absence. She reached out ahead of time that she couldn't be here today, and I forgot to mention that. So, Vice Chair Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. First, I just want to thank staff for giving this overview. I know this is something that many members of the public have also asked us to provide, so thank you so much for coming and providing a lot of helpful information. I also want to say thank you to the commissioners who stuck it out this year, even though there were a multitude of barriers that they had to experience that really impacted their ability to do their jobs effectively. It was no surprise, you can see the voting record. Originally, I was not a supporter of establishing the CCPO at the time that we did, because I felt that there were a number of unanswered questions on how we as a city would ensure that it would be an effective body and would not repeat the same mistakes that led to the dissolution of the previous civilian body, which was the Police Conduct and Oversight Commission, PCOC. So I don't believe I'm alone in questioning the city's commitment towards ensuring the success of not just this commission, but this work in general of having strong and well-supported civilian oversight bodies. And I think in some aspects, that questioning was demonstrated in even the lack of applicants that we saw this time around. You all mentioned we had about 150 applicants when we first created this body, which was great, lots of excitement. And I believe now there's less than 10% of that applied this year. And I know we're going to be taking up those appointments after this receive and file. And, that's something that is very alarming, and something that we as a body should also consider of what led to that dip in applicants. Also moving forward, I see my CCPO commissioner, and I'm really excited to continue supporting the work of the Ward 2 commissioner and the body in itself to make sure that as you're moving forward, you do have what you need to do your work effectively. But I also know that means this committee has to be diligent in our own oversight authorities and support to make sure that you all can do the impactful work that we know you can do and have been doing and are committed to accomplishing. But with that, I do have a couple of questions. So I am aware that the commission did not participate in the evaluation of the chief, which is also part of the ordinance. Can any staff member share why that happened and which staff or department is charged with ensuring that task is completed moving forward?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Wansley, The performance evaluation of the chief is one of the responsibilities of the CCPO, as you noted, but there has not yet been a performance evaluation, is my understanding, of the chief of police. And until that process is done, there would be no role for the CCPO to play, obviously, until a performance evaluation is due. I will share with you as a long-serving department head that the city itself has gone through 3 or 4 iterations of department head performance evaluation processes, and that is one of the issues that our new Chief Human Resources Officer, under the leadership of the new executive cabinet structure, is working on. My estimation, and it was an issue that was discussed at the committee this last Monday evening, or the commission, I should say, last Monday evening, was what role they play and how they could play that. We were unable to address it at Monday night's meeting because we ran out of time, but it is something that they are very interested in pursuing, and we assured them that we would follow up at their next monthly meeting in August with whatever details we can provide at that time. Even if the performance review isn't done, we can outline the steps that would be involving them going forward.
Okay, thank you. I'll make sure to tune into the next CCPO meeting for those additional details. My next question is, I also know that there was a point of contention for some commissioners about just the lack of understanding how MPD policy changes would be conveyed to them so that they could do the reviews that they're charged with doing. Can someone share the process, timeline, and expectations for MPD? And maybe this is a question for the chief or maybe IA, for MPD to share policy changes with CCPO so that they can do that review and make potential recommendations.
Through the chair, Councilor Wansley, I'll take a stab, and anyone else who wants to add can certainly do so. This was also a discussion item at Monday night's commission meeting, and I will share with you that the attorney assigned to the commission, Joel Fussy, gave an answer to this issue broadly. He gave a much more detailed email statement the day of the meeting. It came in fairly late, the agenda, that this was a topic to be discussed. And I think the best thing I can do is share with you all that email, which provides the sort of basic premise that there is a difference between the MPD review process with ALIFA and the agreement that we as a city have signed with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, and the ordinance which allows a review process by the CCPO. They are complementary but not the same. He does a good job of explaining that. I'll share that with you. And then I would also offer that at the April meeting, Commander Wilkes from the Minneapolis Police Department was present, and amongst a presentation she gave, she talked about the policy process at MPD as it is being reimagined going forward, partly in response to MDHR findings and working to level set prior to ALIFA coming on as the evaluator. At that time, there was discussion about what role will the CCPO play in that process. There wasn't an answer, but it was one of the things the CCPO said we need to put a pin in that and revisit that discussion. And so I think those two conversations dovetail nicely. I don't think that there is an answer we provided to the CCPO or to the council at this point, but I think it's one of those items on our to-do list.
Yeah, definitely look forward to getting any information possible around that. And also if MPD, even if there's things around existing policies with the discipline matrix, the whole policy manual, I know we're constantly told that reforms are being enacted or executed by MPD. So I assume that there would be a process being communicated to CCPO about that. So good to hear at least some updates around that. Going to slide 6, though, it states that, again, the resolution that CCPO passed as it pertains to training. I know you mentioned NACO as being, one resource that's been offered recently. Can you also share how staff will be supporting, all of these goals and ensuring that training is available for commissioners in a timely manner?
Yes, so I am in contact with the director of NACO, which is Dr. Tina Barr. She is the one who had that initial training with CCPO. Like I had mentioned earlier, we are going to have further discussion on what other training is available between NACO, OPCR, and what we can deliver with CCPO. That is something that we are going to discuss in the August meeting.
Okay.
Yes, and we are, CCPO, along with OPCR, we were going to communicate with ALIFA to see if there's any other technical assistance that they can also provide and some guidance of what training and information would be useful for CCPO.
Awesome. Those are the questions that I have, but just one comment. I mean, it's clear that ALIFA is playing a really active role in supporting some of the challenges that has been raised by CCPO commissioners. And it does bring me back to, I believe their first charge is to do a 90-day work plan. So I know Council President Payne, you're the chair of the subcommittee for the MDHR or our consent decree subcommittee, all those things. Do you happen to know if ALIFA will be coming forward in the next couple weeks, just to even give an update on when they started, how that process is going? Because I've heard a lot about them doing their job, which is great because we paid that. But be great to get an update in the formal committee too.
May I? Mr. Chair, thank you. I wasn't able to attend agenda setting this morning for Committee of the Whole, but I had my staff join and specifically ask that question, what is the timeline for that? And my understanding, as conveyed from my staff, is that there was an extension on that 90 days of a couple weeks, and that it should be coming most likely by the next council cycle. Would be my 2 cycles? Okay, so we're anticipating having that coming in the next 2 cycles. I'm going to be prioritizing that, and that's been something I've been asking the city attorney about. And
awesome.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Those are all the questions I had.
Great. Thank you, Vice Chair Wansley. I'll pass it on to Council President Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if this question is for you or the chief, but and I know that there's some litigation associated with this question, so I'm sensitive to that. But would conduct that I'm trying to separate formal discipline and coaching, and would there be conduct through the investigation process that could result in coaching that you would still be reviewing through intake? Would these be issues that you would be taking on formally, or would that be something that happens after your process?
So of all of the cases that we have in intake, we review them the exact same way. Once the case investigator, the intake investigator, presents that to the unit head, either with NIA or PCR, that is an option for a case routing decision. That is then sent out to that respective unit or precinct. That coaching is done and then sent back. There is a second way or method for coaching, and that is that sits with the chief, and once a case is sent to the front office, and he could speak to that as well.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Council President. There's been, since I've been the police chief, November 7th, 2022, there's been 62 instances of coaching. I have reviewed all of them just to make sure that, there were no issues with any of them. And it is what it is intended to be in the manual. A-level violations that are, whether they come from OPCR or they come from internal affairs, that are determined to be most appropriate to be handled with the immediate supervisor. And so that information I've reviewed, and I'm confident, I'd be happy to talk more, whether it's privately, whatever, upon legal advice about more in depth about them. Whatever is lawful and appropriate, I'm not sure, but I'm confident that when the independent evaluator, the monitor, anyone that looks at the disciplinary process that we've had, I'm confident that it's functioning appropriately, and that's what an independent monitor or the court would report back.
And so those 62 instances of coaching are documented and subject to review by ALIFA so that they can be verified.
Chair, President, yes, exactly. Yep. And those records are maintained at Internal Affairs, but it constitutes both sources of information.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Great. So, seeing no further questions, I will direct the clerk to receive and file that report. Thank you to our staff for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our next item is approving 6 appointments published on the agenda to the Community Commission on Police Oversight Board, as well as a 7th appointment, James, to seat 10, as you see before us in Ward 10. I'll invite the city clerk to introduce that item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you are aware, the first-year appointments, as I mentioned during the previous presentation, were for a one-year term. Those terms have expired. These individuals are now up for a full term, including the seats that are filling out existing terms. So the one piece you just noted that I wanted to highlight, not on the agenda before the meeting, is the addition of the nominee from Ward 10, James Kennedy, brought forward by Council Vice President Aisha Shugtai. Was brought forward too late to be on the published agenda. We are asking that you would consider adding it along with the other slate of nominations so that those could all be acted on within this cycle and that we could bring on these individual members of the CCPO and orient them before the next regular meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Before we proceed forward, I'd just like to move forward 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.5, 7.6, and 7.7, which is the one in front of us, for approval, and I will move 7.4 separate for discussion. And then, Mr. President, you're on cue. Or actually, we're in discussion.
May I?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering, given there's a bit of a time urgency on this for this cycle, but I know that we had some late breaking additions, and I know there are some questions about other appointees. Maybe everybody hasn't had a chance to review all those applications. Would it be appropriate to forward this without recommendation so that we still have the time to take it up during this cycle, but maybe have a little bit more time to do some due diligence? Or do you want to move forward just kind of separating out the ones that you've already identified?
For me, I'm pretty good with voting for the ones I pulled out aside. I feel uncomfortable voting for the seat I moved for separate discussion, given that it's a resident from Apple Valley, not a Minneapolis resident. And as you know, Council President, last year, when this first came up, this was an amendment I tried to bring forward saying, I believe that if you're going to be on CCPO, you should be a Minneapolis resident. After consultation with the clerk and other folks, we were told that there's a process for that you have to get a waiver. If you have to have a waiver if you don't live in Minneapolis, which that's still not something I would be supportive of in terms of like appointing someone that doesn't live in our city when it comes to police accountability issues. I'm happy to move these forward without recommendations, although I said I still have concerns about appointing someone that doesn't live in Minneapolis.
Okay.
Vice Chair Wansley? We can move, yeah, are you making a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a formal motion to forward all without recommendation.
Okay. Second.
Okay.
Vice Chair Wansley.
Thank you. So I also have been contacted with some of the concerns that I'm pretty sure maybe some other council members have heard about the appointments, also naming the out-of-state piece. One thing that I mentioned during our previous conversation that I think is really at the core of this is we know that many of these appointments are repeat from the prior iteration of CCPO. We also know that some folks are, well, now no longer Ward 10, but Ward 6 in particular with the out of Minneapolis appointee. I think this is representative of a larger problem of, is there a damper of credibility within CCPO where we just didn't have a substantial number of applicants, therefore council members, which is within their discretion, appointed those who did indicate interest, which if you live in Apple Valley or anywhere, there's a waiver process in which you can be appointed. So I think that's a larger conversation. I don't know if staff could speak to, as we're looking and going into the next application cycle, if there's changes or any forward thinking of how we can replicate some practices that led to that initial uptick in applicants when we first, relaunched the CCPO to try to get closer to that applicant interest that we had that previous time.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Wansley, excellent question. And I'll start by reframing us to the work the council did last year to create the administrative reforms for all boards and commissions. You may recall that at that time I said one of the reforms we had discussed but not brought forward were ways of improving and standardizing how we do recruitment, vetting, those types of processes to get a good applicant pool for each of these appointments. The city currently uses a twice per year recruitment process, our open appointments, the spring and the fall. All of our boards and commissions are divided either into the spring cycle or the fall cycle. The CCPO, the Community Commission on Police Oversight, is in the spring cycle. We did standardize our cycles. They used to sort of fluctuate whenever we could open them. We've decided that the spring cycle will always be the month of March 1st to March 31st, and the fall cycle will always be the month of September. I think that consistency helps us to, at least the public would know, spring is in March and fall is in September. So that's one thing we did. But we did not as a group reach consensus, meaning my office leading the work with boards and commission staff on ways we could standardize recruitment. That is something that I think is a phase 2 process improvement for all boards and commissions. It's not unique to CCPO, I think due to its status and the unique nature of this body and also the high profile nature of its work, it certainly grabs more attention than, say, if we don't have a good applicant pool for a different board or commission. That being said, you mentioned the 160 applicants we had the first time we did this. And I did try and give credit to Mr. Hawkins for his work in leading that. He, at the department level, assigned responsibility for helping us create that board and commission, went above and beyond to work with community partnership groups, to really promote awareness of this opportunity, to encourage applications. There was, I would almost call it an entire campaign around it's an opportunity to be engaged. I know that there were media relations tactics that included sending out press releases and engaging and doing interviews with the media about what would this work of the CCPO do. I know there were strategies to go on local radio stations to get into particular communities through the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department. So there was a lot of effort that was led by the department itself that resulted in a great applicant pool that was not repeated this time. And so that's one indication of why not, I'm sure. There wasn't as much due care and involvement this time around. It's one of the things I think we need to do a better job of, as I just said, for the entire enterprise in terms of boards and commissions work. And it's one of the things that our office is taking up as part of enterprise-wide reform. That doesn't answer the immediate question of what happened in March this year, why did we go down, and what do we do to fill the seats that we have. I will note, however, you made a comment that most of the people who were initially appointed are up for reappointment. I would say that we, as staff, me personally, I'll take responsibility for saying I encouraged council members to consider reappointments if those people were interested. It felt unfair to me that this body was appointed in May of 2023. They spent, objectively, I would offer, and I think council would agree, the first 6 or 7 months sort of struggling to figure out what was their purpose. There was not good staff support at that time. And so I feel like they really went through a process to learn their role and come together and to reach consensus and to learn not only what their job was, but how to work together. And then in March, when we reset with a lot more staff support, the city really putting its arms around CCPO and embracing it, they've come to that point where they're now ready to begin work where they should have been last year. So for those members who put in the time and did the effort, it felt like they needed another term to at least get their feet wet, so to speak, get their hands involved in the work. So I do think that all of the members who were originally appointed, the 15 original members, cared passionately. They've demonstrated that. They've shown up even though they were frustrated. They have been committed to the cause. And so I do think that the members who are in front of you who are up for reappointment represent people who are truly interested and committed to the work of the CCPO.
Awesome. No, I thank you so much, Clerk Carl, for providing that context. What I will say for, what is relevant for this body is I heard a budget component in that, which I know my office spoke to you about around that recruitment piece, especially, since myself and Councilmember Ellison, we did bring forward a budget amendment to support the strengthening of our ABC, recruitment, or primarily actually retention efforts. And I'm hearing that might need to happen either through civil rights, bringing a change proposal, or maybe a budget allocation to really think through how we can strengthen marketing or doing some of that campaign outreach that happened that previous time. And also, as you mentioned too, hopefully with this ramp up of staff support around CCPO and the public seeing CCPO become a more active, engaged body that's producing, quantifiable results. Hopefully that will strengthen the public's trust in wanting to be a part of this body and apply. I know I went to those public hearing sessions and there was a lot of questioning around that, of the futility of this body. So I think people conflate the great attendance that happened at that public hearing, where it was great. People engaged this body. We wanted that, to then saying, then those people will want to be on there. And I did not hear that. People said, I don't know what you're doing and I don't want to be part of it. So hopefully with some of these changes, such as like staff support, the resolution, we're finally having some infrastructure be solidified within CCPO. Hopefully, if we combine that with some more, it sounds like financial resources, maybe we can have a different outcome when we approach the spring cycle. But with that in mind, I feel comfortable with supporting the appointments, but I'll also support the motion to forward with our recommendation as well.
Great, thank you. So I'll move those appointments without recommendation, including seat 10 that is in front of us. Can I have a second?
Second.
Great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Moving on to item number 8, receiving and filing a monthly report relating to South Minneapolis Community Safety Center and the work on the community safety design and implementation team. I will invite Director Amanda Harrington, the Community Safety Design and Implementation in the Office of Community Safety, to give that report. Welcome, Director.
Good afternoon. Amanda Harrington, Director of Community Safety Design and Implementation with the Office of Community Safety. As you said, I'm here to provide a monthly update on the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center. I wanted to start with the recent site visits that we completed. We went to Denver to see the Denver AIDS Center. I want to note that neither Denver or Santa Ana has a site that is exactly like the model that we are trying to create here in Minneapolis, but they seemed comparable enough to make it worth our visit out to see them. So with Denver, this was actually an idea that was created from their police department that they had a trauma-informed way to deliver services to people that they were encountering on the streets. Interestingly, they have a space to store items while people are in court, but they also have services there so that people can apply for jobs, benefits, talk to service providers, or just relax. It was a really interesting center. They also have a computer that people can use to apply for benefits and a space for children, although they have to be supervised by somebody over the age of 14. That's the picture that you're seeing on the screen. We also went to the Santa Ana Family Justice Center. That is actually co-located within the Santa Ana Police Department. There they have 14 social service organizations that offer a one-stop shop for survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, human trafficking, or elder abuse. Social service organizations are scheduled by the center coordinator, and they share cubicle space like what you're seeing on the screen while they're at the center. They also have a room for kids that has a lovely window into the cubicle area so that if the adults want to speak away from the kids, they can still keep an eye on children in the center because they don't have staff monitoring that child area yet. In both cases, the cities have agreements on how they work with service providers, but the city does not actually pay the community providers for the services they provide in the co-located centers, which I found surprising. We also recently toured 1800 Chicago, which is here in Minneapolis. That space was very thoughtfully designed. The Hennepin County folks who designed that space really involved people who might use the center in designing it. So they involved people with mental health issues and their family. They heard priorities like making sure there were natural elements. You can see wood in the picture that's on the screen. They wanted curves like that would be found in nature. They wanted things like a bubble wall to help people decompress while they're in the center, and various seating, high back chairs, low back chairs, rocking chairs that would fit for many different people, and they also had a kiosk to apply for county benefits. Both the Denver Aid Center and 1800 Chicago have separate entrances for the police, but both also had uniformed security officers in their center. The Denver Aid Center specifically told us that they chose to have a uniformed security guard present and visible, welcoming all of their guests, so that they could help visitors get used to seeing someone in a uniform. There was obviously quite a few other takeaways from the site visit, but we would be here much longer than you anticipated if I went into that. So just wanted to provide a brief update and then move on to our community engagement summary. We did finally analyze the community engagement summary, and the report should be right now actually on the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center website. I also provided printed copies for council members present today. We always said that we would prioritize the voices of Native Americans, people of color, and those with lived experience with the safety systems. To do this, we had to engage with people in a number of different ways. We had presentations, group discussions, one-on-one conversations, scheduled events, but also impromptu times when we just walked down Lake Street and Franklin Avenue. We engaged with people in person and online, as well as offering a survey. When we counted it up, we had over 40 opportunities to engage with individuals. We did all of these different methods because people in our community don't all engage in the same way. Some people really do prefer just to share their feedback on a survey and be done. And for others, we were told that's not culturally appropriate. We have to sit down together face to face and actually talk it out. All told, we heard from more than 2,000 people, and we're incredibly thankful that they all took the time to provide their feedback. I also want to thank all the community organizations and city council members who worked with us to coordinate engagement opportunities about the center. While the easiest data to analyze is obviously the quantitative data that we got from the survey, I wanted to point out that the survey itself was not representative of South Minneapolis. As you can see on the screen, when compared to census data, there was an overrepresentation just related to race, for example, for some categories, and a significant underrepresentation in other categories. So when we analyzed this data, what we chose to do was give equal weight to the feedback that we got from different events and conversations as the feedback that we got from the survey. And that compensated for over and under representation. When we looked at the priorities for people of color, Native Americans, and people with lived experience, we actually got the same 5 social services prioritized as when we looked at all categories of people that we interacted with. So mental health, unsheltered homeless resources, substance use disorder services, services for youth, and affordable housing were the most important categories for folks in this community. We similarly asked respondents to tell us what they prioritized for other resources in the building, as well as other building uses, and we found the same thing. Legal services, space for community meals, community meeting space, medical services, and childcare for those utilizing the safety center were important to everybody. For more information about what those categories mean, I would encourage council members and the public to look at the full report. We've listed descriptions of what individual community members told us those categories meant to them. Now, the community input is a very important piece of information, but it was never going to be the only information that we considered when looking at what services go into the center. One thing that came up from community, and I was very glad that people brought this up, was the need for services related to domestic violence. It didn't come up enough for us to say it was in the top 5 social service categories. But obviously, the data on the screen shows you that it is a need in South Minneapolis. The slide reflects calls by precinct related to domestic assault, and you can see that the 3rd precinct, which will be served by the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center, consistently has the 2nd highest calls related to that service type. Human trafficking and sex trafficking also came up a few times in community conversations, as well as conversations with police and local businesses. It's a problem that happens locally, but many of us are lucky enough not to actually see it. So it didn't surprise me that it didn't rise to the level of being in the top 5 social service categories. However, the slide shows many of the reasons why we should continue to address this issue, including that many of the people who are most at risk for human trafficking or sex trafficking live in the South Minneapolis community. However, one of the biggest reasons I think that we should include this service in the center is that Minneapolis already has a really comprehensive plan to address human and sex trafficking that fits really nicely with the goals of the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center. The plan talks about training police, increasing collaboration between services, departments, and we have the opportunity to further that work with the right partner in this center. Lastly, food insecurity came up in quite a few conversations, but it did not end up in the top 5 categories during our analysis of the data. Regardless, though, there's other information that says in some parts of South Minneapolis, we have 14 to 25% food insecurity in some areas. So it is a significant issue for residents. Now, I did talk with Second Harvest Heartland and others, and their recommendation was not necessarily to create a new food shelf. There are many food shelf providers in South Minneapolis, but I did hear from some providers that they don't have enough space to adequately serve the people that they would like to. And this was supported by a 2019 survey that was done of food shelf managers that really said the biggest issues that they were facing were lack of freezer and cooler space and dry storage. Now, given all of that information from the community and our additional research, this is the current plan for the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center. Some services don't fit neatly into the definitions of prevention or restoration. There's a lot of overlap, but this was kind of my shot at making a nice diagram that matches the ecosystem from the Safe and Thriving Communities report. I've mentioned this before, but we don't plan on having all of these services in the center on day one. There are some services here that are duplications of services on Lake Street. For example, having crime prevention specialists at Lake Street and at the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center frequently would mean they're not in community, and their job should be to be in community most of the time. But that's part of the reason we've said Lake Street is a temporary center. So we don't want long-term duplication because some of the services would be taken away from the actual community. So under prevention, we have a mix of some of the services that we talked about from community affordable housing, food insecurity, human trafficking, medical, mental health, but we also have some services that are already provided by the city, like the crime prevention specialist. There are also things that we're planning to do, like piloting ambassadors in South Minneapolis, as well as adding culturally specific navigators. This came up frequently in conversations with community, that they really wanted to see somebody who looks like them when they walk into the center and get services, somebody who knows the culturally specific resources in the community and somebody who speaks their language. Under the restoration category, we've put addiction services, community navigators, which are already city staff, domestic violence folks, and services to address human trafficking, legal services, and unsheltered homelessness. Right now, the only service that we have in the response category is police. I know there is a desire from some that BCR also be in the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center. Right now, they have agreed to have a presence at the Lake Street Safety Center, and we'd like to use that as a pilot opportunity to see how a co-location would go in that site before BCR and before the city makes decisions on what that would look like in the permanent South Minneapolis Community Safety Center. There are other services and resources, other elements of this center that aren't necessarily safety services, but are important to the space that we're trying to create. And so I've mentioned some of these things before: 311 Service Center, public bathrooms, rooms for reflection, prayer, lactation, community meeting space. Some other things are new based on what we heard in community. So folks really want a kitchen. We showed in the priorities that community meals are important. So we want to have a kitchen space so that people using that community meeting room could actually adequately prepare food. A medication disposal box is something we're exploring with Hennepin County, and a safety communications center to dispatch ambassadors and other non-police safety resources. I've also reached out to Hennepin County to see if we can get a kiosk to help people apply for county benefits at our site. So if they come to the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center seeking that, we don't have to send them away. which would be really frustrating. We will start with a space for children to play while they're supervised by somebody from their family or one of their friends. When we open day one, we will not have childcare provided, but again, there will be many iterations of this center. And then other rooms in this space, meeting rooms, office space, will have to be flexible to balance collaboration, but also the needs of private conversations that will necessarily take place in the center. Outside of the center, we're hoping to have art, and we've already met with the Department of Art and Cultural Affairs to start that process. And because the center's so close to a bike trail, we would love to have a bike repair station at the center. I also heard that in community. And it would be incredibly easy just to put a sign outside that said this is letting people know this is a safe space to do marketplace exchanges. We've also reached out to Metro Transit to explore getting a bus stop that's closer to this center so that transit's not a barrier for people utilizing services. Now, all of this is really exciting for me, and I'm really ready to start designing. We have to wait for that design firm to be in place so that we know exactly where everything goes in the building. But I do want to tell you that what we're working toward is that the police portion of the building would not be more than 60 to 65% of the building. I know that was a question that people were interested in before. So this committee previously asked if we had asked community organizations if they wanted to be in the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center. And aside from informal discussions that I had with organizations, I did not request that information because I didn't want it to appear that I was recruiting for the center before we knew what services the community was prioritizing. So the next step for us is to issue a request for information. This process is not something that the city does very often, but it does exist. It allows us to find out who in community wants to and has capacity to be in the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center with us and provide the services that I referred to previously. We can rely on the wisdom and creativity of community organizations to help us understand the best ways to provide services in the center. They're going to know best if their clients are going to go to this center. They're going to know exactly what services should be offered, how many days, what hours make sense for them to be there. And so we're currently drafting the request for information and are planning on spreading the word so that, again, it's not just people who already contract with the city who have access to apply for this opportunity. I'm hoping to have the RFIs out in the next 2 weeks. After the request for information help us understand what's feasible and who's interested, then we will issue requests for proposals so that we can contract with specific organizations. Those contracts will vary. Some of them may be no-cost contracts because people just need to share space with us, and some may be contracts for services. We will learn more from the request for information process. I previously mentioned that Property Services would issue an RFP for the design and architect firm. The RFP is working its way through city processes, and we expect to come before council with a contract in early August. And as always, I can't talk about the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center without talking about the larger work that I'm doing related to the safety ecosystem. So we are reconfiguring our community engagement and communication subgroup to focus on increased collaboration and engagement strategies for safety-related projects and work. The community doesn't necessarily differentiate the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center between 3000 Minnehaha, and so it makes more sense if we work more closely together, just as an example, when we go out to engage community. But it won't just be those two projects working together. There will be a number of projects and teams at the table increasing collaboration. The infrastructure subgroup is shifting focus to create a system to implement required enterprise-wide collaboration on safety services. We continue to work with the policing project on the asset and gaps analysis and developing dashboards for non-police safety services. We have weekly meetings with the policing project to collaborate with them and monitor progress on the work. We have seen a couple of drafts of the dashboards and should have the first draft of the asset and gaps analysis in the next 2 weeks. So we're making some progress. That asset and gaps analysis in particular is going to be critical for us to create the specific plan for how to build out the comprehensive safety ecosystem. It's mentioned repeatedly in the Safe and Thriving Communities report that that needs to be done, and so I just want to reiterate that we are at that stage of planning. We continue to work with performance management and innovation on developing pilot programs, and I understand that Director Hasbargen will provide updates about those pilots in August. And lastly, I just wanted to share some really great collaboration that I experienced recently, which shows the direction that our city's moving. The Minneapolis Police Department's working with the National Public Safety Partnership. It's a program of the Department of Justice. They facilitated planning sessions in the last 2 days where multiple groups of stakeholders were at the table struggling together toward a common goal. So just some examples of all the folks at the table, because I won't remember everybody, but Office of Community Safety, Law Enforcement, Hennepin County Attorney's Office, the Department of Justice, but community members were also there. And there's others. I know I'm going to forget somebody. What I liked, though, was that we were having honest conversations, real conversations, and we were collaborating and problem solving together. That should be the norm about how we work in the city to solve problems. And my hope is that we'll see more of that happening as we continue to develop out the community ecosystem. I am available if anyone has any questions.
Thank you so much, Director Harrington. Really appreciate your update. I'll pass it to Vice Chair Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. First, thank you, Director Harrington, for the presentation. First, I do want to ground us, as you reiterated multiple times throughout your presentation, but ground us in the fact that we are moving towards a new public safety system, one that emphasizes a comprehensive public health approach that goes beyond policing. And this building is going to be a physical embodiment of that direction. And given that this building or center will be in my ward and it's going to set the precedent for the whole city, I do want to feel clear and confident about what is going in this building exactly and how it aligns with the direction that we're moving towards with our entire comprehensive public safety system. I'm glad that we were able to receive this presentation. It does get us closer towards that specificity that I've been asking for several months now, but I will say there are still a number of questions that you even admitted that still is going to have to be answered in the coming weeks and months. I will say even some of the questions for me that comes up pertains to the services listed on slide 10, which are all extremely important, but I do know residents will have questions about what it actually looks like to co-locate all of them in a building alongside the police. I'm just thinking of an example in my ward already that I'm dealing with. We have a methadone clinic in Ward 2 that is providing extremely valuable and important treatment services to our residents dealing with substance use disorders. And I know my office, a number also of residents value the facility and the services that they provide, but also at the same time, my office has had to reconcile a number of challenges that comes with having that particular facility in a residential area next to children. And I think there are some similar challenges to be expected if we're talking about placing child-based or child-oriented services or treatment services next to services that's going to be, providing supports to vulnerable residents. What does that look like? All, again, within the context of this being in a residential area. So that said, I do have a number of questions. Going back to slide 10 with the 15 services that are listed for preventative and restorative services, and only one being listed for responsive. You mentioned already the percentage for the police. So just to recap, you're saying 50 to 60% will be estimated to be for police, and the remainder will go ideally to accommodating these services, specifically preventative and restoration.
Chair Chavez, Councilmember Wansley, yes, we're striving for no more than 60 to 65% of the building to be areas that are police only. And the interesting thing about this building that's different from many of other precincts is that they have parking inside in this building, and so the exact square footage will be different from some of the other precincts.
And can you share a little bit, how did you get to 60 to 65%? Because, the ratio doesn't feel like there's parity there. If we just did 100%, that's like 30 to 35% for the rest of these really substantial services, knowing not all might go in there, but still with 60 to 65% being mostly for MPD.
Councilmember Wansley, we actually looked at footprint, the size of other precincts, to figure out what other things we have in the city. And we know some other precincts are not sized correctly, and we looked at the new first precinct that we have put together. And so that informed part of our decision about estimating how much of this building would be taken up for the precinct.
I know we're getting a follow-up presentation after this around staffing, but from my understanding, is staffing also playing a role in those considerations? Because from my understanding, third precinct is around maybe under 100 officers. And I mean, we're having this conversation with the police contract. We know 70% of those officers have to be on patrol, so they're not going to be relegated in the building. So some of those staffing challenges and current staffing requirements, that means, officers are not sitting at a desk, are those being taken into consideration with that, basically percentage allocation?
Councilmember Wansley, staffing is one of the factors that we looked at. We don't want to build a building that is just for the understaffing situation that we find ourselves today. We do have to consider what size is that precinct going to be at some point. But a lot of the elements of a precinct actually don't relate to offices necessarily. There are locker rooms. There are other elements that are going to be taken up regardless of how many people are in the building at one time.
Yeah, I will just name, that's a big concern of mine. We already saw with 3,000 Minnehaha, there's not lack of parity when we're talking about creating a space that's going to be for community, and especially a sensitive topic around the third precinct that led to basically the destruction of that area, especially residential and commercial spaces. The idea that still overwhelmingly this building would be for a police precinct, I think there's going to be more conversations to be had around the parity around that percentages if we're truly trying to support these services. So I know that's going to be ongoing. You also touched on the piece around some of the site visits, how they were able to rearrange their space to allow for co-location. Have you, and it sounds like that's going to be part of the RFIs, but in terms of how you're going to be assessing how those or factors around, or actually no, will that be put into the RFP for the design contractor largely in terms of basically creating spaces that allows for that co-location? You mentioned separate entrances, things of that nature, which I'm assuming will be influenced by the RFIs too, for those who want to be co-located.
Councilmember Wansley, it's a great question, and I actually can't answer that because Property Services is taking the lead on the RFP for the design firm. I do know that I and the committees that have been working on design and implementation will be really important partners once the design firm is hired so that we can inform those decisions. I just don't know what's written into the actual RFP at this time.
And this is probably a staff memo that we can do a follow-up for clerks to do a question for our property service to basically get a sense of the scope of focus for that RFP related to the center and whether or not they will be providing feedback on how to structure the site in a way that allows for the co-location of these non-armed services. And I can follow up on that question too. The next piece, you somewhat touched on this at the last presentation, but we are having conversations around the $4 million that's being allocated towards pilots for this center, which now the mayor is proposing to go towards the police contract. And also cultural ambassadors, those are listed here. We also, use public safety aid to fund those initiatives as well. If the mayor's proposal is successful, can you share, some of the pilots that you say are going to be recommended for here? Like, where will that funding come from, essentially?
Councilmember Wansley, some of the recommendations in the mayor's proposal actually directly benefit the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center. Additional pilots that haven't been accounted for, I did ask for money in the next budget cycle to account for some of those pilots. And some of this, again, my learning from doing those site visits was I didn't realize that we might not have to pay for some of the services in the site. We may have partners who wish to co-locate with us and have no-cost contracts. So we may have fewer pilots that cost money than I anticipated.
Okay.
We also, one more thing. We also have a number of philanthropic partners who have reached out expressing interest in supporting what we're doing at this center. So that's another option for us to look for funding if needed.
Are you able to share some of those partners? I know traditionally those been like folks from the POLADs. At one point we had a partnership partnership with the Minneapolis Foundation. Can you share a number of some of those philanthropic? Yeah.
You have named quite some
Okay.
of them, and I'm also terrible with names. I'm happy to follow up with some of the other folks that we've reached out to, but I know those are the two that come to mind right now.
And they've reached out saying, hey, activate us, let us know how we can help.
Regarding safety work, and I think they're obviously curious about what specifically would we be asking for related to the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center or related to something bigger in the ecosystem, but they've expressed interest in partnering on that.
Great. Also, clerks, follow-up question around philanthropic partners, which are excited, I would say, to support likely the safety center piece. I get we have partners that's doing work around safety in general. Okay. Thank you. And then last question, slide 10, also around response. You mentioned BCR. Is there any efforts that will be looking at seeing what other potential responses that could go there? I know we're doing, and maybe that's where the pilot fits in, because we're developing also our spectrum of response services outside of just police, BCR, but some others might be coming into that too. So is there going to be work to figure out what other response services might be based here too?
Councilmember Wansley, you're accurate in part of the asset and gaps analysis is to figure out what are the services that might also fit into this response bucket, and then what are, because that may be an area that there's a gap where we need to develop additional response services. So I think that will depend on what we see from the policing project as well as some of the other works that we're doing on pilots.
Okay. That's all the questions I had. Thank you, Director Harrington.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wansley, and thank you, Director Amanda Harrington. Seeing no further questions, Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you. I wasn't getting speaker management fast enough. I just want to thank you, Director Harrington, for this very thorough report and all the hard work. It's really coming together in a nice way, and I wish you the best of luck as you take on this new innovative project. So thank you for your great work.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Councilmember Rainville. And again, yes, thank you, Director Amanda Harrington, for that presentation. It's been very helpful. I will direct the clerk to receive and file that report. And colleagues, we have our final item. Item number 9 is receiving and filing a report in response to a legislative directive by Vice Chair Wansley related to the Minneapolis Police Department staffing and problem nature codes. I will invite Commissioner Barnett and the Office of Community Safety to give that report. That's Hale.
Good afternoon. That is not construction. That is definitely hell out there. Good afternoon, Chair Chavez, Council President Payne, Councilmember Wansley, Councilmember Rainville, Todd Barnett, Commissioner of Community Safety, and you'll hear from two representatives, one Director Hodney from 911, and you'll also hear from Deputy Chief Kingsbury from MPD as part of this presentation. I just want to start today by talking just very briefly about two things that you know. One, that this legislative directive is really about an update from the 2022 study of MPD related to the problem nature calls, and also that when this study was conducted, the data that was used was at a point where MPD was at a higher staffing level than they are today. And as you know, and it was talked about in the previous presentations, have been talked about a lot, is MPD's staffing level. And we know that's about 40% than what it was in 2020. And with that, also I should have mentioned as well, although Chief O'Hare is not part of the presentation, but he is present here in the audience as well. As you're aware, since you confirmed Chief O'Hare in late 2022, Chief O'Hare has made some significant changes in his administration's organization, and also made some changes in recognition of the MDHR's settlement agreement and implementation. And he's also made changes anticipating the consent decree. The 2022 staffing focused on, the study focused on 4 areas: staffing analysis, operations analysis, problem nature call analysis, and also business process analysis. In this presentation, like I said earlier, you'll hear from Director Hodney and also from Kingsbury, Deputy Chief Kingsbury, about the action that's been taken since the report, and also the current data related to problem nature calls, response times, and also the operations. So I will ask Director Hodney to come kick us off. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and welcome, Director.
Good afternoon, Chair Chavez, council members. I'm Joni Hodney, the director at Minneapolis Emergency Communications Center. Most of the information in the CNN report with regard to Minneapolis Emergency Communications Center had to do with problem nature codes, what they are, how we use them, and can any of the workload be shifted or reduced by removing problem nature codes from our system. I'm going to have a couple of slides here where I'm going to do a little deeper dive into what problem nature codes are, what they do, and then some of the adjustments we've made since the CNA report was done. And all of this will lead up to helping with a better understanding of some of the slides from MPD. So as indicated by the CNA report, Minneapolis Emergency Communication uses close to 200 problem nature codes. Those codes are used to determine the response for multiple agencies: police, fire, EMS, but also for animal control, park police, and our BCR responders. Problem nature codes are used primarily to send the appropriate response at the appropriate time. As planned, each problem nature code is carefully named to give the initial overview of the incident to the first responders. Regardless of the responder, police, fire, or EMS, the problem nature code starts to give the initial information while more information is being gathered. Sending a code to the computer system to start the first responder does not mean the call taker is done with their role. Additional information may still be gathered, which could change the type of response that is needed. Problem nature codes can be changed at that time when a call taker is still gathering more information and the incident changes, or it can be changed when an officer arrives on scene and finds that the information given to us by a caller may be different than what is actually happening when an officer gets there. When determining the services needed, there can be 3 or more problem nature codes related to the same type of an incident. For example, if someone's reporting that a person has had an overdose, we may use a problem nature code of OD, which is going to send an EMS response. However, if we also discover that there's suspicious circumstances, we may use the same type of a nature code, but it's an ODEP, which is going to send an OD response for EMS and police. And again, in the same category, if we find out that someone is having an imminent life-threatening situation with that, we'll add fire to it by using a code OD all. So while it does seem like we have a great number of problem nature codes, there is a specific reason that they're set up the way that they are. It helps MECC quickly send the right response for the right responder the most efficient way. Call takers are trained to gather a set of basic information from the caller and let what the caller is telling them drive the choice of the problem nature code, rather than choosing what problem nature code to do and letting that gear the questions. For example, after getting the location, which is the most important piece of information we need to get help started, we add the next question that every call taker must ask is, tell me exactly what happened. This gives the caller an opportunity to give an initial overview of what's going on. And based on that information, the call taker can start to determine additional information that needs to be gathered and what type of a situation this needs to be coded to. In general, the CNA report reflected that overall, the problem nature codes used at MECC seem to be well-crafted, with only a few suggestions of adjustments to the codes themselves. Determining the type of event is not the only use for problem nature codes. They also are preset to assign the priority for a call. There are 4 priorities that will be seen on a dispatcher screen at any time. A priority 0, which is the highest priority that we have, and it's an example of that would be a baby not breathing or a first responder needs help. A priority 1 is the second highest priority, which is an urgent need to protect people and property that's actively still happening or just occurred. Priority 2 is a priority level that covers incidents where there's not an immediate threat to life or property. Police should respond as soon as the higher level priorities are addressed to prevent any further escalation from these types of calls. Priority 3s are the lowest in priority with the longest wait time. These calls would be things such as loud music, report calls, collection of property, or wanting to share some type of information with police. The last code is generally not seen by anybody in the public, but it shows on our computer screen and the police officer's computer screens as a priority 4 or a priority 9. These are community events. That way we can put a police officer at a specific location on the event, or it might be they need to finish a report later after an incident that they were on and we need to divert them to a higher priority call. We'll put it back in there and code it to one of those so that they can see that report and complete it later. When creating problem nature codes, MECC works closely with the responding agencies to determine the priority, the number of officers or fire rigs that we would send based on the best safety practices for everyone involved. Based on this information from the CA report recommendations, they had a few recommendations for MECCs regarding the use of problem nature codes. Changing the name of an EDP, which was an emotionally disturbed person, to a more appropriate name of a person in crisis. This change was made in April of 2022. Sending alternate response for those in mental health crisis. The Behavioral Crisis Response Team launched in December of 2021. Currently, there are 3 vans out in the city full-time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Little information on the calls that have been processed for behavioral crisis response. In 2022, there were 8,348 calls that were coded to behavioral crisis response. 18.6% of the time it was joint work with the police department. In 2023, 9,992 calls were coded to BCR, and 22.1% of the time was joint work with the police department. What the joint work could be is either BCR has responded and determined that they need a police officer to come out, or a police officer has responded and decided to have BCR to come out to help with the de-escalation situation. The CNA review of the problem nature codes had a few suggestions to look at removing less frequently used codes. However, this recommendation was done without the full understanding of how some of our codes work. We share a computer system with the U of M and with Hennepin EMS. Because of this, their codes show in our computer system, and when the data was pulled on problem nature codes, their codes were included in that data. Problem nature codes for Minneapolis Response and Minneapolis Park Police are the ones that should have been used in this data collection for an accurate picture of those problem nature codes that would really need to be removed from our report. Some of our own codes that they recommended possibly not using anymore, which are rarely used, are beneficial for us to have a quick response in the rare case that they're needed. For example, we have a code for an airplane crash in the city. We also have a code for a barge in case a barge hits one of the bridges in the river. These are 2 code examples that I hope to never have to use. But in an emergency situation, they're programmed to quickly send the appropriate response at the appropriate speed. One of the other suggestions was to extend traffic control. They began a 24-hour staffing in the summer of 2021, and this allowed less frequent use of police officers on the nights and the weekend shifts, freeing up their time to work on other calls. Working with our partner agency 311, we transfer as many report calls as possible to their center or recommend the usage of online reporting. Damage to property reports and theft reports that did not just occur or are not in progress were moved completely to 311 in June of 2021, reducing the number of officers that needed to be sent to those calls. While 311 can alleviate some of our non-emergency calls Monday through Friday, we get those calls on holidays, evenings, and weekends. 311 is not open, and it may require a police response to best serve the public during those time periods. Another effective alternative for public service, when a caller would prefer to talk to a police officer for a report that is extremely beneficial to MECC, is the MPD call center. However, due to the limited police staffing, the call center is another resource that can only be utilized during some days and hours. This completes my presentation, and I will turn it over to Kingsbury or the chief? Chief O'Hara.
Welcome, Chief and Deputy Chief.
Chair, thank you. Thank you, Director Hodney. Director Hodney, her staff worked very hard for quite some time with Deputy Chief Kingsbury on this, and we appreciate their partnership. And just also want to acknowledge we appreciate the professional staff in MECC that is not only the lifeline of our residents in emergencies, but also the lifeline of first responders when we need some. There's always a calm voice on the other side of the radio there for us, so thank you. This presentation stems and is focused on addressing specifically the legislative directive and the issues that were raised in that, and trying to answer all of those questions as best we can. As was mentioned earlier, this is from a CNA report that was issued the beginning of 2022, prior to my employment with the city. But it was one of the biggest issues with the data is the data itself is prior to 2020. And we know a lot has changed since then. That's obviously prior to BCR. That's prior to the distribution of calls and call volume that we see today. That is just, it's not accurately reflective of the current situation in this city. So that being said, through the public safety partnership, which is something I applied to last year that we have now with the city, that's offered by the Bureau of Justice Assistance, we were able to get CNA to come back, and they have begun to update the data based on what is our current reality now. So we will have updated data sometime in the future through that program. And that's because we value what's in the report. We believe it's important, but we also just need to kind of have some guidance and a little bit better understanding of what is our reality today. And additionally, what's part of that, one of the things that drives the distribution of patrol and so on is what is our vision and what is the direction of the agency as far as what officers do during the course of their day. And obviously, we know it is important for officers to have time not on calls for service, to be doing things proactively with community, to be engaging with community, and what that looks like. And we know the officers' time will further be changed both in the coming year under new requirements from MDHR, but as well as what ultimately may be required by a federal consent decree. And what I mean by that is there's already, in some cases, over 100 hours of additional training that's required by members of the department, which is time, again, away from being available to respond to calls for service, as well as additional reporting requirements so that we're more accurately reporting new requirements based on stops, arrests, searches, all those types of activities. So these are all things that will impact availability for calls for service. So I'm just going to, that being said, I'll just briefly touch on the high-level stuff and hand it over to Deputy Chief Kingsbury, who is the expert on operational issues for the department. Talking about response times and time to clear calls for service, these are just some examples of the various variables that affect response times and times on calls. So the overall staffing on a shift in a precinct, and that changes not just by precinct, but also time of day. The call load, how many calls are pending in the queue waiting for response, the weather, traffic conditions. I'm sure folks are aware construction in parts of the 5th Precinct is an issue that can delay response times currently, as well as just distance from dispatch location to the call. And time to clear, crime scene preservation, both waiting for the crime scene unit to respond and collect evidence, as well as the size of the crime scene itself requires more manpower. Arrests and delays that can happen in processing, waiting to get into the jail and so on. When a subject requires medical attention, they need to go to the hospital prior to being admitted to jail. Time taken to then go back to reports. A lot of times with calls pending, the officers will clear a call because they've done the work for that instance, but it goes back into the queue under that priority 9 that Director Hodney mentioned, because the officer has to, after they go to their next call and they get some time later in the shift, they need to return to that to complete reports. Obviously, staffing impacts the availability for calls for service and the complexity of the initial call itself. With that, I'll turn it over to Deputy Chief Kingsbury.
Welcome.
Thanks, Chief. Chair Chavez, Vice Chair Wansley, council members. As the Chief said, I'm Deputy Chief John Kingsbury. I oversee the Patrol Bureau. Going on to the first slide here, this is one of the questions that was specifically asked in the legislative directive, and we identified the top 5 911 citywide calls for service in 2022 and 2023. These are all priority 2 calls. That's important to note, as you'll see when we get into the response times later on. One other thing to note, too, this is from top to bottom, so the unwanted person call in 2022, that was the most frequent call that year, and then the 5th most frequent call was domestic. So from top to bottom, 1 to 5. Important to note, too, is the unknown wireless call on there. That's something that does take a lot of resources, obviously, if it's in this list of top 5 calls. One thing that 911 is doing to help us with that is by the end of the month, they are implementing an automatic callback service to that. So no squads will be dispatched or resources used up until we know that that cell phone caller actually needs police. It's not just a pocket dial or a missed dial or something like that. So that should help us immensely going forward. This is just a repeat of the other slide, although it shows the response times for those priority 2 calls. For us, response time is the time measured from it entering from the call taker to the queue to the first squad arriving on scene. So that's something to consider. It's a little different than the CNA report or how they measured it. As you can see, too, the times are somewhat variable, but they're all within what we expect with priority 2 responses. Couple notes on the response times, just to have in the back of your mind. One, overall, nationwide, there's not a standard on what is a good response time or what is an expected response time. There's no governing body that says police shall respond in X number of minutes to a certain type of call. So that doesn't exist. Second to note is the domestics. When the CNA presented this report a couple years ago, I know there's a fair amount of conversation on the time delay to respond to domestics. What wasn't pointed out during that presentation is that that refers to priority 2 domestics, so not priority 1s. Only a small percentage of domestic calls for MPD are priority 1s. That would be like a domestic assault in progress, a domestic with weapons. And when those are coded priority 1, you'll see that the response time considerably decreases. We broke this down by precinct as directed in the legislative questions. You'll notice from these are all priority 1 calls for those years, 2022 and 2023. Different from the citywide display, these are all the calls for 2 years combined. It was not broken out by separate year. But you'll see across precincts, generally, those calls are very similar. Maybe not as with the same amount of frequency, but they're all top 5 categories are the same.
I'm sorry, just quickly
Yes.
on slide 11, did you mean to skip the second part? I know you covered
Oh, I'm
domestics.
sorry. Thank you.
No problem.
As I was doing that, I'm thinking I'm missing something, but I was on a roll. So, yes, what's important to note, too, what we started to see after the rise in violent crime at the end of 2020 and continuing for a few subsequent years after that, particularly with shooting calls, what happened was with the declining resources, other responses to priority 1 calls during that hour window surrounding that initial shooting call significantly increased to 14 minutes. Now, that was measured in early 2021 to mid-2021, but we don't have any data that shows that has changed, and that we believe it continues to increase with our decreasing staffing. So what that illustrates is that with fewer resources, they're being dedicated to these more violent crimes, leaving fewer resources to respond to other higher priority calls. All right, that one I can skip because I already did it. We went ahead and broke out priority 2s and 3s, and that'll be the next couple slides for you to see. Response times are all within what we expect for priority 2 calls. Across the precincts, though, you'll see there is some variation in the types and frequencies of the priority 2 calls in those parts of the city. So we see a little change from the priority 1s. And then moving on to priority 3s, we kind of get back into very similar categories across the precincts, although they may not be in the same order. But again, the time sometimes is a little lower than what we might expect with priority 3. A couple possible explanations are able squads or single officer squads being near that to be able to pick it up, or when those squads are free, they're automatically dispatched to it. So a lot of variables within the dispatching time and who's assigned a call and why these calls might look like they're being responded to quicker than priority 2s. All right, moving into the top 5 longest calls to clear, the most time-consuming calls. You'll see from this that these are some long times. How we measure this, the length of time on each call, is by the first squad assigned to the last car to clear. And what that means is that throughout that time, it could be the very initial responding officers might be there that entire time, or other squads or investigative units or even forensics might enter the call at a later time, therefore making that call longer or appear longer than it should be. But again, these are some of our most serious crimes. These are all priority 1s or priority 0 calls. Specifically, 2 with these is generally they're related to other serious crimes as well, which adds to the complexity, the number of officers used handling those calls going forward. One of the things we were asked to identify as barriers to implementing these recommendations. These were touched on by the chief, the commissioner, and Director Hodney, so I won't hit on all of them. But one that I wanted to point out specifically is that bottom one, the other options. That refers to BCR, embedded social workers, our traffic control agents, CSOs, other entities, non-sworn entities that assist us and take the call load from us and help us out. They also have their own staffing issues. Particularly with CSOs, I know we're replenishing those ranks, but when talking to traffic control or even the embedded social workers, we don't have the staff that we would like to have that can help take more calls and take that load off for us. So that's something to consider. Some fiscal considerations. These are probably quite obvious to you. I'll hit on 2 of them that I think are important. Or actually, I'll just hit on the one. The overtime costs. So what we found out is that from 2019 to the end of 2023, our overtime costs have doubled. What we also have seen happening in that same time period is the regular hours worked by officers go down significantly. That's obvious because our workforce is 40% below where it was when we began to gather these numbers. What this means, though, in the end, is we are working the same amount of hours, generally, that we were working in 2019. We're just having to compensate with overtime. And officers, the fewer that we have, are working more and longer hours to provide the same level of services that we did in years prior. With that, I think I'll turn it back over to the chief.
So just some high level, actions related to the investigations. We've decreased sworn staffing and investigations by more than 50% since 2020. At the same time, the level of the most serious cases has significantly increased, both shooting cases and obviously murder, as well as other types of violent crime. One initial change that has occurred is 14 temporary civilian investigators were made permanent this year, as well as just a general refocusing with the other law enforcement partners on trying to be as precise as possible on the people who are driving violence, gun violence in particular, in our communities, as well as trying to focus on problematic areas. What is currently driving geographic concentrations of violence at locations. One new strategy that's been implemented this year is risk terrain modeling, which is a geographic-based strategy that comes out of Rutgers University that sort of looks at not just the concentration of crime, but also the environmental factors on the street. Do you have, corner stores of certain types of businesses together, liquor stores, clustering in ways that help drive violent crime where it's concentrating? And the next level of doing that is also trying to find ways that we can collaborate with not only other city resources, but non-law enforcement based ways to sort of correct some of these underlying conditions. So that's something that's new that we report on weekly, both trying to monitor the proactive activity of law enforcement and how that is changing. Because frankly, the distribution of violent crime in the city, even just since I've been here, has changed. Parts of, the 4th Precinct, North Minneapolis, historically had about 40% of the city's gun violence. Today is below some of the high periods, over the decade prior to 2020. So that's significant progress. However, we have patches of South Minneapolis, both on the 3rd Precinct side as well as on the 5th Precinct side, where violent crime has been concentrating that is significantly higher than what had been in the past. So we're just trying to, involve strategies to sort of readjust our resources where they can be most effective. So actions related to the patrol response, obviously, BCR has been incredibly successful, and they are 24 hours, as we all know, but at the same time, there are times both where their response is not appropriate because it's not safe for them to go, or they go and they request us to respond to, which I believe is about 20% of the time. Embedded social workers, currently there's 4 that cover the 5 precincts. One has to cover two of the precincts, and they are employees of the county. The 311 center, we try and use that as best we can to take some of the calls that can be taken over the phone that tend to be very, time consuming. They can be referred both from 311 MECC as well as by the individual officers. And as Joni noted, many of the calls for reports are sent directly to 311, but they are not 24/7. So obviously time periods where they're not operational, that still requires a police response. We do send burglaries and robberies to the call center if there is no evidence or no suspect, no dangerous condition on scene. Other agencies, obviously we have focused enforcement details, special events, public safety focus that we coordinate both the Sheriff's Office, the State Patrol, the BCA, and as you know, the University of Minnesota now helps us with 911 response in Dinkytown and the immediate area around the university. Within MPD, something I enacted this year was a response to a problem that developed early February. We saw, these robbery sprees were happening where we would have at sometimes more than a dozen robberies in a very short period of time. So we immediately, whenever we see not only a robbery now, but any serious street crime that's happening very quickly, clustered together, we stop response to anything that's not an emergency, redeploy resources into the area, utilize state patrol helicopter, other resources to try and suppress, the extent of those types of crime sprees. And we have seen significant success since we've done that. We also have the watch commander is now something that happens every day. When I first came here, that was just at night. So whenever there's not a deputy chief or an inspector working, whether it's a weekend during the day or a holiday, there is a watch commander that has the authority to move resources around citywide. And I think that's it. So
Thank you both so much. We have two folks. We have Vice Chair Wansley and Councilmember Rainville on queue. We can stay here until 4:30 p.m., but given that this is a really important presentation, my recommendation would be to just move the question component to this to the next cycle. That would give time for council members to be able to ask adequate questions if they have some. However, if folks in this body want to stay until 4:30, that is the latest we can stay. So I would.
I have to leave. I have a 4 o'clock.
For sure. I would.
I was going to make the motion, if I could get in queue before, and make the motion to continue this item to the next cycle. That way, we can have adequate discussion. So I would need a second.
Second.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. That has been moved to the next PHS meeting, which I believe is on July 24th. Perfect. Cool. Thank you, Deputy Chief, and thank you, Chief, for the presentation. Again, really appreciative of this presentation. A lot of us here are going to have a lot of questions, so I want to make sure that we have adequate time to ask those questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Seeing no further business before us, I would declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you.